This is Center Stage, putting your firm in the spotlight by highlighting business owners and other industry experts to help take your firm to the next level. Hey everyone, and welcome to Center Stage. I'm your host, John Henson, and this week we're doing something a little bit different. We've had an episode before about the Clifton Strengths Assessment, and that's something that we've also used in our office. It's a great hiring tool. It's a great way to, really assess the strengths of your team and how they work very well and all that. But we've also done another kind of assessment here at Spotlight Branding internally, and I am a huge fan of this. It really has helped us, internally as a team, learn more about each other, understand each other better, communicate with each other better. And that is the Enneagram. And on the surface, if you're familiar with it, you might think it's just another personality assessment, but I get your skepticism. I was there. I get it, but it really is so much more than just another personality test that you would take on like BuzzFeed or something. And so we're going to take a deep dive today into what it is and just how understanding it can really impact your firm and really help your firm culture and help you communicate with your team members. And so to help us with that, I am joined by Enneagram teacher and coach, Emily Wingfield. Thanks for joining us.
Hey there. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for reaching out.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to get into this. Before we start, tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you get into Enneagram and make this your livelihood?
Yes. Well, I am so passionate about it. I have always loved personality assessments, tools. I always want to understand things. I want to understand, and really, I want to understand people. Why do we do what we do? So I have loved Myers-Briggs, DISC, Strengths Finders, all the things. Any personality tool I love. However, then I found the Enneagram about 7 years ago, and so I've been teaching it for about 6 years, and I really got into it just for myself because I was having all these aha moments of, oh, this is why I do what I do. And then I ended up teaching a class just at my church for free about the book, The Road Back to You. And it went so well. People said, well, you should teach this again. My sister will take it. My mother-in-law would take this. And I mean, that was 6.5 years ago. And ever so slowly, I've built my business. Now I teach individuals over Zoom, and then I teach businesses over Zoom as well, but smaller groups are a little bit easier. And then I teach in person. I'm here in Atlanta, Georgia. And I mean, I live and breathe the Enneagram. I think about it all the time because it's such a powerful tool for transformation.
Yeah. So for people out there who aren't familiar with it, what is the Enneagram and how was it developed?
Yes. So it sounds like a weird word. It really is just a Greek, two parts of Greek of Ennea, which means 9, and gram, which means pointed figure. And that's what it is. It's a 9-pointed figure. And there's not a definitive exact history on it, but it's over 2,000 years old. It was used by desert mothers and fathers, eventually kind of brought over. It's ancient. It was brought over from Europe down to South America and then eventually came up to North America. And really in the 1970s, it was kind of rediscovered in California, and which happened to also be at when modern psychology was also kind of being discovered, I should say. And so it just goes beautifully with modern psychology to understand our motivations and why we do what we do. And thanks to podcasting, ironically, it has really helped it. Social media and podcasts have really helped its popularity because it used to be taught orally of the oral tradition, the narrative tradition of you would get a group of people that all were the same Enneagram type, and they would share how they see the world. And then you could say, well, I see the world that way, or I don't. So thanks to podcasts, we have now been able to take that narrative tradition and spread it throughout the world to better understand how we see the world.
Yeah. And you and I were talking a little bit off air about this, just in how I was kind of skeptical of this at first. I was kind of reading through the descriptions, and my initial thought was like, all right, this kind of sounds like a slightly better version of a horoscope, right? Everything's a little vague. Nothing is like ultra super specific. But then as you get more into it, at least what I've found, you get more into it, you start studying what these other numbers are, you figure out what your number is. And all of a sudden now it's like, sure, you may have other elements that from other numbers that might apply to your life, but the stuff that constantly shows up for your specific number is so much more detailed and accurate as it applies to your life. Why do you think that's the case, especially compared to potentially even other assessments like a Myers-Briggs or a DISC or a Colby?
Yes. So I think all assessments are wonderful. I think the goal in life is to learn more about yourself. So
Mhm,
however the assessments can inform you is great. But the power and the reason that Enneagram is so amazing is because it helps you with transformation. So a lot of those other tools, they tell you who you are. You're extroverted, you're a thinker, you're judging, whatever it is.
mhm,
Or here are your strengths. That's great to know. But the Enneagram gives you a map to say, here's where you are. And you don't have to, you're not stuck there. If you want to grow out of that, here is what's keeping you stuck. And here are some ways to gently lean in to that exact thing you're afraid of, or the exact reason you're stuck is because you have this limiting belief. So if you can understand how that's a limiting belief and then see a different way to live, then you can slowly start choosing alternate behaviors that
mhm.
free you from those limiting beliefs. And
Yeah.
that's something I'm very passionate about with the Enneagram is it is not just information, or it is information to be used for transformation. It
Mhm.
is to help you free yourself from yourself. And that's why I think that's why it's my favorite. I think it's the most powerful one.
Yeah, absolutely. Because and I think that that's one of the things too is like, I keep using the horoscope example because I just know of people. It's like, well, I'm a Virgo and this is how I am. But I think the difference kind of with Enneagram is more like this is how you might be presently, but here's the potential. Like, this is what you could be, in terms of like your best self, but then this is also what you could be, in a more negative way. And there's a broader spectrum there of things that you could maneuver through inside your own number.
Yes, exactly. And a lot of people hear about it and say, oh, this just puts people in a box. But the idea is actually, this is the box you put yourself in. And
Mhm.
um, so, for instance, I'm a peacemaker. I don't like conflict. Well, ironically, just like you were saying with the horoscope, this does not mean I get to now have a free pass and say, nobody have conflict with me because I don't like conflict. It actually highlights that's the exact thing that is holding me back in life is I'm so afraid. I used to be, I'm not anymore, but I
Right.
used to be so afraid of conflict that I missed out on a lot of life. And so the actual prescription for getting healthier is to gently, ever so slowly, lean into conflict, stand up for myself, share my voice, and that is what actually leads me toward being a more fully alive human being rather
Yeah.
than just staying in this box.
Yeah. And so you mentioned you're 9, you're a peacemaker. Why is there a specific reason why there are 9 different numbers in an Enneagram, or like how they came up with that?
Mhm. I do not exactly know. I'm sure this is a little here Enneagram joke. For the Enneagram fives out there who are the investigators, they probably could answer this or reference us to a website or something like that. But I do know there were used to be nine deadly sins, which
Mhm.
have been reduced to seven. So, and that's, I mean, the Enneagram was a tool for spiritual growth. It can obviously now be used in businesses and things, but it, and this doesn't have to just be Christian. This is
Yeah.
just, hey, you were created for so much and you are living a limited life. So, how can you get back to what you were fully created to be? And those nine deadly sins are often what's keeping us from living our fullest life, which
Mhm.
goes along well with the 9 Enneagram types.
Yeah, and that makes a ton of sense. And so, hopefully, I'm sure you know this, for people out there, what are, because it's each number is also, paired with a title. So you said, fives are the investigator, nine is the peacemaker. What are the other, I guess seven at this point? What are the other labels or names for the other numbers?
Sure. I'll just go around the circle
Yeah.
so everybody can get. So Enneagram ones are often called the improvers or the reformers. Some people call them the perfectionists, but I like improver better because they are just always seeing how things could be improved. And they have this ideal. There is an ideal self, there's an ideal world out there, and we are not at it. And let's keep seeing how we could improve that. I want to pause and say there are not approved Enneagram words for each of these types.
Mhm.
So if that's why we say a variety of names for
Yeah.
them, because improver might sit better with someone than perfectionist. So just hold on loosely for your listeners to what the words are. Enneagram twos are called the helpers or the befrienders. They want to be that go-to person that they give a lot of love and help and service and friendship because they are wanting your love and appreciation and validation in return. Enneagram threes are the motivators or the achievers. They see things
Mhm.
in terms of success, efficiency, being the best. But this could be in whatever realm it is. It does not have to just be business. It could be being the best dad, being the best minister, being the best volunteer, whatever it is. It's efficiency, success, achievement. Um, yes, being valued for what they do. Enneagram fours are the individualists or the romantics, and they see the depth of life and they want to be unique and known, and they really feel things very deeply, and they just they see the beauty of the world, but also all that's missing in it. They can struggle a little bit more with melancholy and
Mhm.
just this incredible depth of feelings. Enneagram fives are the observers or the thinkers, and they feel most safe and secure when they have gathered as much information as they can about whatever they want to gather information about. Um, they can they don't want to have to rely on anyone else, so they want to be very self-sufficient. But it could look like it hoarding, but not in a hoarding all the things. It's actually um, being very could be very minimalist of I don't want to rely on anything else or have to depend on anything or anyone else.
Mm.
Enneagram sixes are the loyal skeptic or the questioner. Enneagram sixes are very loyal, but they don't quite trust themselves. And so they look to external authority for guidance and support. And because what sixes are really looking for is safety and security. And so they can be very loyal to a group. However, I think it's such a good name for them, loyal skeptic. They're also going to be skeptical. They're always skeptical of things. They don't
Mhm.
quite, it's going to take them a long time to trust because they're going to ask a lot of what ifs, like, but what if this happened? But did you think about this? And they also say, yes, but okay, well, yeah, you said this is the plan. Yes, but did you think about what if this happened instead? So they're
Mhm.
wanting to be prepared for worst case scenarios. Enneagram sevens are the enthusiast or the optimist. They live in the future and are always thinking of the possibilities, the fun, all the opportunities. They are often very positive people, but they're really trying to run from any uh, emotions, honestly, or especially dark emotions. They don't want to be caught up because they feel like they will be overwhelmed and taken down if they experience or have to sit in any dark emotions.
Mhm.
Enneagram eights are called the protectors or the leaders, and they do not want to be vulnerable or out of control. This does not mean they have to control everything, but they don't want you to control them. That's the big point, is you don't control them. And they can be very assertive. They know what they want. They go after it. They're very direct. Um, they're an interesting type. And Enneagram nines are the peacemakers or the mediators. they just want peace in life. And they really, because what they're looking for is to be connected to everyone. And so they just, they often avoid conflict. Or if they do ever have conflict, they really, really, really don't like it and do everything they can to try to avoid it until it happens to be knocking at their doorstep.
Yeah. And I think, thanks so much for sharing all of that, and I have some follow-up questions to that, but I have some other things that I want to ask you that I think will make the other follow-up questions make more sense as we get to them. But I mean, even as you're going through all of those, you know, it's, it's still like does a really good job of providing those descriptions of people, because it's like, like you talk about, twos being helpers. And it's like, I think most people would say like, yeah, I like helping people. I want to make sure I help people and all of that. But there's still a big difference when that is your entire mindset and how you really approach things versus you being more of a skeptical person, or being loyal, like where that's kind of like deep down in your core, that's how you operate, right?
Exactly. You've hit the nail on the head because, and that's the power of the Enneagram is it goes to your motivations. So back to when we were talking about why the Enneagram is so great is because it's, you can change your behavior often if you strong arm it or something. But if you understand the motivations behind your behavior, then you can say, oh, I did that behavior because I was motivated by this. Okay, next time, now that I'm aware of my motivations, do I still want to do that same behavior or do I want to try something else? And honestly, I kind of talk about talking yourself off the ledge is
Mhm.
rather than just having this reaction, you respond to something and say, oh, so for instance, a lot of the growth within Enneagram is self-talk. I mean, I joke that, people used to say, oh, you're crazy because you talk to yourself. And I'm like, no, no, that's one of the healthiest things you could do. So for me, if I'm noticing a possible conflict and I'm already turning the other way, I gently talk to myself with care and compassion and say, oh, wow, I noticed my stomach already kind of felt uncomfortable. Okay, this feels like it's a loss of connection, but it's not as scary to other people. And you've learned in the past that it might feel uncomfortable, but it's worth it to get to the other side. You can do this, and it's a lot of gentle self talk that helps you choose a different behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, and another good example of that kind of in the opposite direction, where it's like, you talk about threes being achievers and wanting to be the best at something, like someone who's a little bit more skeptical would be like, well, yeah, who wouldn't want to be the best at what they do? And I'm sitting there thinking about it, as like, yeah, that's not really important to me. It's like, I'm good being really good at things, but I also know, like, I also take that sort of thing pretty literally, where it's like, statistically, the odds of me being the absolute best at something are pretty low. So like that doesn't hold as much value for me. That doesn't mean I don't try. It doesn't mean that I don't want to be good at things, but being considered the absolute best at something is not it for me. Like, I don't need to be considered the best podcast host ever. I just want to I want to feel like people think I'm good, and that,
Mhm.
I'm on the above average side, I'm, on the good side of podcast hosts. So, just that difference too is really interesting. I do know there's another aspect of the Enneagram in terms of like how it's organized. And, there's nine numbers, and then they break it into three different groups. And then in the triads, they have a heart, a head, and a gut. What does that mean?
Yes, yes. So it's, if any of y'all are math fans out there, I mean, the Enneagram has so many amazing math things going on with it as well. But so you take the nine, you divide them into three groups of three, and you get these triads. So I'm going to start with the um, gut triad, which is eight, nines, and ones, just because that's usually how I start my
Mhm.
teaching. And so the triads are how each grouping of numbers takes in initially takes in information and responds to life. This does not mean that's their only avenue. It just means that's that knee jerk reaction. And so eight, nines, and ones take in information instinctually. They really do just have this gut intelligence, and they respond to life kind of from their gut. They're off could be honest, direct, and what they're wanting is autonomy. And so what they're saying to the world is, don't mess with me, don't mess with my world. I want control, boundaries, autonomy, respect, justice. And what happens is when they're not getting these desires or wants met that I just mentioned, they experience an emotional reaction. And so the emotional reaction for eights, nines, and ones is anger. But then it comes out in three different ways. So eights have assertive anger. They let you know. They have in for this explanation, we'll call it aggressive anger. It's not always aggressive, but it works well because if eights have aggressive anger, then nines have passive aggressive anger. So a nine still actually has a lot of anger within them. They might not be aware of this, but as they get healthier, they'll realize they do have a lot of anger. But they get their needs met passive aggressively. So they're not going to overtly try to get their needs met. Yes, go for it.
Yeah, but because they're peacemakers, they don't avoid conflict. That's why it's probably more passive.
Exactly. But the interesting thing is they're still getting their needs met. So it's
Mhm.
it's a sneakier. Honestly, it, I used to have more challenge with eights, and now I've come to really appreciate them because I'm like, they're just straightforward. Like they're just going to tell you that nine passive aggressive
Yeah.
is very manipulative. Well, I don't know if I'd say manipulative because we're not always trying to manipulate others. We're trying to get our needs met, but it's not healthy. Passive aggressive is not good. And then Enneagram one's anger really comes out as just resentment and frustration. It's just kind of this simmering under the surface anger that um, comes out in maybe a little bit biting, sarcastic remarks or huffs and puffs kind of thing.
Yeah. No,
I have a feeling you
I'm
have a
I'm
one in your
laughing.
life or something, the way you laugh.
Well, I'm laughing because our owner is an 8 and our VP is a 1, and it, that's exactly them to a T. Yes.
Yes. And what's so cool is, as you learn more about the Enneagram and these triads, is when you have conflict with when you know your Enneagram type and then you have conflict with someone else, you can look at these triads and the sensitivities, and often you can figure out, oh, I really want boundaries and respect, and you're in a different triad and you really want connection, affection, and maintaining your self image. The conflict was that we were stepping on each other's toes with that. So it's just,
Mhm.
yeah, it's just like the express lane on a highway of like, oh, we've solved the problem because immediately we were able to figure out what our sensitivities were.
Yeah, I mean, and I've seen this where it's like, a gut person, they have this gut feeling of wanting to make this decision, they're ready to move forward, but then you have maybe head people who need to think things through and then maybe tries to put the brakes on that a little bit, and all of a sudden that could create some conflict because now the gut people feel like they're being held back or not trusted or something like that. So yeah, it it's very interesting once you kind of see those dynamics, but then once you understand those dynamics, it really helps you discuss things and understand each other to where you can kind of come to a compromise, to where it's like, I don't think your idea is bad. I just give me like 2 hours to digest this and make sure that I feel good about it, and then we can move forward.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of the Enneagram is it's not you are bad or your idea is dumb. It is, oh wow, this is just how I'm wired. This is just how you're wired. We're wired differently. How can we meet in the middle? And it's so funny you shared that example because I was just teaching business yesterday, and that exact thing happened. Is a gut person said, yeah, I just have a gut feeling about things, and a head triad person with an Enneagram 6, she said, no, I need numbers and data. I'm not going to just do something because you have a gut feeling about it.
Yes.
And luckily they were able to laugh about it. They know enough about themselves. But that's okay. How can we meet in the middle of and here's the other thing, neither of those are the right or wrong way to be.
Yeah.
Actually, we need both. you know what? There's a few times that a gut instinct could go wrong. There's a few times that the numbers aren't always going to make the best decision. How can we use both ways that we see the world to make the best decision for the company?
Yeah. And you touched on it a little bit, but I want to make sure that we cover the heart people, make sure that,
Yes.
their feelings are taken into account. Like how do they respond in this sort of way, as opposed to a gut or a head person?
Mhm. Yes. No, I did think, I thought it's always a pet peeve of mine when podcasts teach one section of something and then never, and then leave the rest hanging. So I don't want to do that. So Enneagram twos, threes, and fours are in the heart triad or the feeling. They take in information and relate to life via their heart. They experience intuition through their emotions. So they can feel things and connect to others. They can also read other people's feelings more easily, but they are a bit more image conscious than the other types. And so what they're thinking is, it's twofold. It's see me the way I want to be seen. I have an image of how I am, and I want you to see that. But also, they see through the other person's lens. So I'm wanting to portray this image, but how is my boss seeing me? Are they
Mm,
seeing me the way I want to be seen? That's a very big word. See me the way I want to be seen. And this triad, which is twos, threes, and fours, when they do not feel like they are getting these sensitivities that they want, which are love, connection, affirmation, affection, bonding, maintaining their self image, recognition, approval, then they experience shame. But really, a lot of these types say it's shame, but it's really just this sadness. It's just this inner sadness. And so, how they try to avoid that is twos become overly friendly and helpful, threes become overly valuable to try to avoid this sadness and shame. And
mhm.
then fours really notice and reinforce being unique and special and set apart. Do
Yeah.
you feel like I covered the twos, threes, and
Yes.
fours? Okay.
Yes.
We're going to go into
Absolutely.
five, sixes, and sevens. That's the head center, or
Yep.
the thinking triad, and they are really focused more on their cognitive intelligence, and they take in life through their head and connect to the world through thinking. They are good at generating ideas because they're often analytical, logical thinkers. I love this quote. Their mind is having a conversation with itself all day long because they're just thinking and analyzing and just looking for, because what they're trying to do is find safety and security.
Yeah.
So their sensitivities are what they're really looking to have met is security, safety, certainty, assurance, preparedness, thinking, anticipation, and opportunity. And when what they're saying to the world is, who or what can I trust? They are, because they're always looking for safety and security, they're really thinking, can I trust this? I've got to think about it. And when they don't feel like they're getting those security, safety needs met, they experience, some Enneagram people say fear. It's really more anxiety, because fear is, this is an actual threat at my door.
Mhm.
Anxiety is, what if I had a threat at my door? What would I do? How would I be prepared? Let me think and think and think and plan. And
Yeah.
so that's the five, sixes, and sevens.
Yeah. And you really kind of start. I think adding that element to it, at least for me, really put it over the edge in terms of it being just another personality test versus being something that you can start to really clearly pick out how different people think and see the world and process things. Because at that point it's going more than just personality traits, like it's really digging into how your mind operates.
And it can be tricky at first because we all naturally say, well, we think all this, we all are thinking all the time. But when you really start to notice, you can
Mhm.
say, oh, so I'll be honest about myself. I don't think that. I mean, I'm thinking about the Enneagram all the time, but I go through life with just a lot of gut reactions. I just kind of
Yeah.
go where my gut tells me to go. And once I became aware of that, again, it's like, oh, I think I need to engage thinking more than just my gut instincts.
Right. Yeah. And it's not that you don't care how people perceive you, or that you don't care about data, but that's just not your default. That's not where you go to first.
That is, yes, you're hitting the nail on the head. We're trying to figure out what our default is. A very common question is, well, can I change types? Or I don't know, sometimes I'm this, sometimes I'm that. You do channel different types, and I don't think we have time in this podcast to talk about stress, or maybe we do, stress, security, wings.
Yeah.
But you really are your core type, because and if you really take the time to notice, you'll see that motivation running through all aspects of your life. Now, sometimes a different motivation will pop up because of things, but that core motivation is running in the background all the time. So it seems to help. So the goal is to figure out your dominant Enneagram type, but you can still acknowledge that you have all of the Enneagram types within you. This does not mean that really seems to get people hung up is I have to just be one. Well, yes, you are just one, but you still have all the others within you. And twofold, you can, one, notice what some of the other bigger types are within you, to kind of notice, oh, those pop up a little bit more. But also you can notice what you might not have as much in you. And now, once you become aware of it, you can start to channel that a little bit more if you choose to.
All right. So we're going to wrap up this episode right here and come back next week with a part 2. There was just so much in this episode. And look, honestly, I want to keep these episodes to around 30 minutes, 45 at the most. But we end up going for over an hour in this episode, really diving deep into Enneagram. And so I don't want to overload you with it. Definitely think this is super valuable. So come back next week for the second part of this amazing episode with Emily. All right. If you're interested in learning more, you can go to enneagramwithemily.com. That link is in the show notes for this episode to learn more about all of the things that Enneagram has to offer. She has a ton of great resources and worksheets. You can also schedule some meetings with her to really start diving into Enneagram and understanding it for yourself. And also, if you do not know your Enneagram number yet, go take a test. It's free. There's a ton of them out there that you can go and get your number. Just Google Enneagram test, and one of the first results is probably good. So go check that out. Really do appreciate you listening, and come back next week for part 2.
Thanks for listening. To learn more, go to spotlightbranding.com/center stage.